So, I've been meaning to do this video for a while, but it wasn't until I recorded an episode with the Thirsty Mage on how to get into JRPGs that I realized I really need to do this. Now, that episode should be out around the same time as this video, and we even got Alex from the Backlog Battle as a special guest, so you can check that out on the Thirsty Mage. Now, despite writing for an RPG site and being on an RPG-themed podcast for over a year, I only really got into RPGs a few years before that. And when I'm talking about JRPGs, I am more specifically meaning your usual turn-based shenanigans. So I specifically went through a process trying to acclimatize myself to them until I eventually found something I really like, and now look at me. So growing up, aside from Pokemon, where my usual strategy was to be 10 levels higher than everybody or just carry through with the one tough Pokemon, I didn't really play this kind of game. Might have if the Xbox 360 didn't break and I could have finished Blue Dragon, but... So when I decided I wanted to give RPGs a try, and for some reason I thought Bravely Default was a good idea, and don't let anyone tell you that Bravely Default is a good beginner's RPG. It is, it's very classic, it's very much for, it's good if you're an RPG fan, but it's very much traditional, grind heavy, all the things beginners don't really like. So no, bad idea. So I decided I must just not like that kind of combat. So I tried to go for something different. For example, the Paper Mario games, or even like Bug Fables, which I need to play for the podcast but haven't yet, where it's still turn-based, but on your turn, whenever you're doing your attack or even defending, you'll have to press a certain button prompt, and either that is for your attack to even work in the first place, or just to make it more effective. And I feel this helps keep people a little more engaged in the battle, although apparently some people don't even like that. So, unfortunately, I picked up Paper Jam Bros, which once I got to that first cardboard battle, I dropped like a hot potato. But generally, most of the Mario RPGs are good. Actually, this year I played through Mario and Luigi Dream Team, and we did a crossover podcast with that. And if you're a South Park fan, I would definitely say the Stick of Truth. I first got that on PC because I wanted the uncensorship patch because it's censored in Australia. I ended up dropping it at that point, but I did finish it years later when I got it on the Switch, which was censored, but I already knew what scenes I was missing out on. And then actually becoming a fan by that point, I realised the old style section in Canada was actually just, whoa, it's Dragon Quest! Oh. But I wouldn't recommend that for people that aren't fans of South Park because that's a very specific kind of humour, but it is in that style of RPG. The other thing I tried was some strategy RPGs, particularly Fire Emblem. Like I played a little bit of Awakening and then later Fates, where the only good thing about that is because that has the added thing of not just picking your moves, but you've also got to focus on positioning. And I am not very tactical or smart-minded, but I still do really like this genre, and it might be a good choice for people that just want a little more to do. Though the first Fire Emblem I actually beat was later on with Three Houses. But hey, that one has fishing, so of course. Personally, I'm not really a fan of the triangle weapon system, which is why I really like Fire Emblem Echoes. I got about 3/4 through that. Unfortunately, I went through like a tower where you have to do certain fights in a row, and then the main character died on the last fight in the tower, which meant if it was somebody else, I could have just let them die, but it's game over. So I still haven't finished that, but I really like it. And Three Houses is good because they also don't have the weapon triangle. And I do have a review for that where I go into a little too much detail about every minor activity you can do, but you can still check it out. So, can you guess what JRPG got me into the more usual kind of JRPG? I'll give you 1 second. Wrong. Dragon Quest VIII on the 3DS. I have no idea what really possessed me to pick it up, honestly, and it actually, it's like the typical, it gets better this point in, but honestly, it actually took me like 20 hours before I was like, yep, I definitely really like this game, because then that's when the story got really good with like the church and that. One reason I can recommend Dragon Quest to people that are looking to get into the more traditional type of JRPG is that it is literally that. It is the generally pretty basic, you're just, pick your commands and then they go. I managed to get through the entire game, including the post-game Dragon Trials without using the tension mechanic at all. just ignore it. And I personally recommend the 3DS version for various reasons, such as fast forward, extra party members, new ending. Not all of like the new content is great, but one thing that's really good about this version of the game is that if you turn your camera, all the enemies respawn. And there are points where the metal slimes or liquid metal slimes constantly spawn. And these are enemies that try to run away straight away and are pretty resistant to physical attacks. You can only do 1 HP at a time. But if you manage to beat them, you get tons of experience points. So doing that, you're able to quite easily grind up past the levels that are required. So it's a way to make grinding a little easier. I also thought it was really funny when I was playing, when you get the boat and you go to the western continent. I guess I didn't know what the particular kind of thing of water they were telling me to go to was. So I landed on the first side of it and I was like, oh man, all these guys are really tough and really hard. So I actually ran through that area and got to the town. And then it wasn't later until I was heading further westward where they were talking to me about a problem I'd already resolved in that city that I realized I was supposed to go through the river and then land there, whereas I just landed on the hardest side of that continent. But I like games that let you do that, especially when I played Pokemon Gold on my 3DS and I realized I could do 3 gyms out of water. That's always really fun to be able to do that. whether it's a good idea or not. Anyway, as you can tell, I really liked it. I'm honestly surprised I even fit in this cosplay because I weighed a lot less when it was made. So that is a good choice, but I would also recommend Dragon Quest XI, particularly the Switch version, just because it's got the extra content. But I did play it on the PS4 because it's quite similar to 8, but it is the newest one, so it's a bit easier to get a handle on. Plus, the demo lets you play basically 10 hours of the game for free, and then it transfers over when you purchase the game. Or 2 hours if you've already played the game, so you know where to go and you've got ultra fast forward on. But so if you're sure that you want to get into that specific kind of RPG, I recommend Dragon Quest series, particularly 11 or 8 if you just happen to have it hanging around. Because it is I, the Dragon Quest fan, who has only played 8 and 11. Okay, typically these games are pretty long too. I'm not sure in the podcast what kind of ones I recommend, but there are also, short RPGs, so then, sometimes the problem is just the length, or, you don't have to invest as much time to know whether you like it or not. So I can recommend Cosmic Star Heroine, because that game, the enemies they don't respawn, so you can't really overgrind or anything. So I've done a review on that as well, and a podcast episode, so I'll link those. And if you want to get into Persona because you see everyone posting about it, personally I would recommend the Royal version. I myself only played vanilla, but I watched my fiance play through Royal, so I know most of what happened, and just seeing all the extra content and what things been changed, it's there's not really a reason to play the original Persona 5 unless you already have it, or if you've got a PlayStation 5 and you've got the PS Plus and you get that game for free because of you get a certain amount of games for free. And some people like that because you've got the mix between the dungeon crawling and having the social aspect of life, whereas other people don't want that at all. So, but that game is really long, so if you aren't entirely sure whether you like RPGs, you might not necessarily want to invest in that just because of the time commitment. But like I said, there are shorter games you can try out and see how, just sort of adjust yourself. Heat up the water a little bit at a time. So it focuses on JRPGs. As for Western RPGs, they can be pretty different, especially the computer RPGs. And I recently tried to get more into Neverwinter Nights 2, and I can't get past the part I beat when I was 12. Probably ask somebody else, they are generally a bit different in style. So another thing we talk about on the podcast is that some people don't like anime, whether it's the style or just sort of some kind of type shenanigans. To which I say, well, if you're going to get into a genre of games where the main original starting point art design is by the Dragon Ball creator Akira Toriyama, good luck. But there's plenty of Mario RPGs, so that, that's more of a toony style. And there are Western RPGs that are sort of made inspired by JRPGs, like Cosmic Star Heroine, and some very bad ones that I don't want to even acknowledge exist. Or there's stuff like, I haven't played it, but say Banner Saga, so if you want to be in that sort of tactical thing where it actually carries your progress through all the games, but you're not really sure about Fire Emblem, I'd try that. And the last thing on my notes is Atelier. So Atelier is also, the systems change a bit depending on the game, but it is also generally normal turn-based combat, or at least with like a timer thing like with the Ryza games. And they're also good beginner points because they're not too hard, and they're pretty cutesy, girly appearance. Like there's only a couple games where you even have a male protag, and it's got a really good focus on gathering and crafting, so that, outside of combat, you've got something else to do, and that's actually the main focus of the game. It's more like combat's a means to an end, or like just progress the story, but you still need to do the alchemy to do that. And if you do find it's a bit hard, there's nothing wrong with looking up an alchemy guide. Some of the older games do have time restrictions, but depending on them, like say I played Aisha, you'd have to kind of deliberately be doing bad to fail. Like I wasted an entire year in that game and still beat it in time, with time left over. So I have reviewed Atelier Aisha, and I've done Atelier Ryza 1 and 2, and I also did a Thirsty Mage episode on Ryza 2 when I was only just sort of into it. I forgot to show this off. I was so excited for 11 that I imported this, which is not very, as you can tell, not good to take photos of, despite not knowing any Japanese and not actually end up trying to play the 3DS version of the game. But it is really cool. So yeah, that's the story of how I managed to get into JRPGs, and how you might be able to, and just some personal recommendations. Be also sure to check out the Thirsty Mage episode to get some other people's perspective on it. I just realized I had something to show off and then I forgot to. Here's a little black mage I made for my fiance a couple years ago, and I've been streaming the first Final Fantasy on Twitch lately, so if you pop in, you might see him there. I think that was everything. Bye!